Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Robert McDowall. We're going to take a look at votes for life, the post office scandal, and the possible outcome of the 2024 general election. Robert, as ever, good to see you.
And you as well, Tony. Thanks.
Let's start off on a note of victory as far as you're concerned. That is, of course, getting this votes for life legislation through. Can you tell us a bit about it, please?
Yes, it's been a long journey. I mean, I personally only got involved in it in 2017 when I stood down from the States of Alderney, but it's been going since the early part of the century, about 2002. What happened then? Tony Blair's government reduced the period for which expats could vote in general elections from 20 to 15 years. And ironically enough, it was a Labour supporter, Harry Schindler, who sadly passed away a year or so ago, aged 100, and lived in Italy, who was the real catalyst behind this. There were a couple of attempts at private members' bills to extend the voting franchise to expats for life. The most recent was, I think, under the Theresa May government, but Brexit got in the way, so that didn't succeed. And then after, I suppose, quite a lot of lobbying and campaigning, we got the Conservatives to put it on their manifesto for the 2019 election, and then the Election Act was passed about 2 years ago. It wasn't specifically on the expat thing. There were some other changes as well. But so the act was passed, gosh, nearly 2 years ago. But the statutory instrument which puts into place the processes and procedures was only passed in November, and that couldn't be released until the electoral returning officers, who've been given some money to sort of fund the verification and checking, quote, had their money in their bank accounts, which was the middle of January, hence the launch last week.
And I should imagine most of them are bankrupt, so they're delighted to actually see some money.
Yes, any money from anywhere, you're absolutely right.
Tell me,
Woking top of the class as well.
Woking is still top of the class. I can't say I'm proud to say that. It's a bad achievement there where we are.
Yeah.
What's the procedure to register then?
Well, yeah, the procedure to register, you can register either to vote in person, pretty unlikely, by physical proxy, that is someone going along to the electoral polling station with supporting documentation that they can vote for you, or proxy by post, which is probably worthwhile for those far-flung parts of the world where the postal service is even worse than in the UK. And then finally, just direct post. It's all on there's a government website, Votes for Life, which sets out all the detailed procedures and provides the online forms to complete, so that you can register to vote in the constituency in which you last lived in the UK, or if you didn't live in the UK, where your parents last lived in the UK. And there are about 20 different forms of sort of verification of that. And what is interesting, I was on a call earlier today, Tony, and already 17,000 people have registered to vote in the UK general election since the announcement last Tuesday, which is quite a lot.
That's incredible, yeah. I mean, the one thing that I was always skeptical about, because by nature I don't trust government,
Right.
was the fact that, if you sort of registered to vote in the UK, they could say, oh, your domicile is really in the UK, and then you get clobbered for inheritance tax, capital gains tax, and all the other horrors that go with it. But you received a letter from the Inland Revenue, didn't you, to clarify?
Correct. There's a letter from the head of HMRC clarifying that by registering to vote in UK elections, you do not change your tax position at all. I'd also reflect that if indeed inheritance tax is abolished in the much preluded a budget that the government's having in April, or March, I beg your pardon, then that dismantles half the objections.
Yeah, true, but it
But not yet.
could always be brought back, couldn't it?
It could.
Yeah,
You're
and I
right.
mean, the demographic is such that they've only just started to harvest the tax as far as IHT is concerned.
That's correct. That's correct. But no, it was very important that the HMRC made that point, and there is also in place a practice directive anyway. But it was particularly in what I call offshore jurisdictions, where financial advisors always take a very prudent view.
You came up with a fairly interesting stat as far as the Channel Islands were concerned
Yep.
in terms of the number of eligible voters.
That's correct. And funny enough, that was also further amplified on the call this morning. Essentially, anyone in the Channel Islands who has a UK or Channel Islands passport and has lived in the UK for any period of time and can evidence that is entitled to vote in UK general elections. Now, I prudently estimated it will be about 60,000 across the Guernsey and Jersey and Alderney. Some statistics that came to me this morning indicate it's nearer 70 to 80,000 across
Wow.
the two. And that is quite... Now, obviously, everyone isn't going to jump out and register to vote, but it is a much bigger number than I first thought. When this initiative kicked off, I estimated there'd be 20 to 25,000 people, but because of the clarification on who's eligible to vote from the channel, it's quite a substantial number.
I mean, we're talking in terms of nearly 40%.
Absolutely right. It is a substantial number. It was interesting. I did a couple of broadcasts for the BBC last Tuesday, and the BBC asked the states of Jersey if they'd like to comment on the Votes for Life. They wish to give no comment. Mind you, I think they were rather embroiled in that no confidence vote against their chief minister. So they had probably more important things on their minds.
Having said that, though, if you do register, you're fully entitled to give your UK MP a nudge if you feel anything's going a bit awry.
Absolutely. This is obviously an unthought of and unintended consequence of it, but because of the nature of the Crown dependencies, you can now write to your MP, who will immediately forward it to the Ministry of Justice to get a response from the government in Guernsey, Jersey, or the Isle of Man. That may not remedy the issue, but as we know and others know, the governments in the Crown dependency don't like the spotlight put on them by various ministries in the UK.
Right, yeah.
Obviously, you shouldn't use it on if your bins aren't emptied or you fall over the cobbles. But it must be, in my view, on important matters. And I personally would suggest if there becomes trouble with our air links, that is certainly one where I think collective writing to MPs would certainly spark some interest and would be perceived apprehensively by the government in Guernsey.
Interesting. Let's move on to the post office. Quote, the greatest injustice in British legal history. It was dreadful, wasn't it?
It was appalling. In whatever level you look at it, whether you're talking about the technology, the processes, the institution, the ministers, and so on, everyone has to hang their head in shame. They really do. Yeah. And I never thought that these days a sort of docudrama would generate that sort of result, frankly.
Yes, I mean, it's been teetering on for years and years and years. And then suddenly it gets onto ITV and things are done within a week. Let's start off with the Horizon system, though. It was proved to be faulty from the outset, I believe.
Correct. I mean, it was a hugely ambitious project by a public corporation, and Fujitsu is what I call it's a Japanese body shop. They do big projects. They have a core staff, but they contract in a lot of people to work on the extensive but routine processes that are required to deliver such a big project. And it says something, I suppose, both about the culture of Fujitsu and the post office, that the more difficult the project got, the more they tried to keep it hidden.
Absolutely, yeah. I suppose there was a lot of money riding on it. But
A huge amount, yeah.
like the RSPCA, the post office has the ability to privately prosecute in the criminal court. That shouldn't be allowed in this day and age, should it?
No, it shouldn't. And in fact, if you sort of step back in history, I think it was in the late 60s, early 70s, the post office and BT split.
Yeah, it was post office telephones, wasn't it?
That's right. And
Yeah.
I think it was late 60s. Anyway, they split. And of course, the BT went on to be sold to the public and has split off into a number of hands. The post office stayed fairly static for quite a long time, but these what were essentially crown powers, which they originally had, should have actually been removed, or certainly looked at the time of the split between the post office and British Telecom, actually. And certainly, when it was privatized, I'm surprised that ever continued.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the prosecutions, there were over 900. Some of
Yes.
them were jailed. The total number of branches, around 11,500. So by implication, the post office was saying 8% of our staff or our sub postmasters are guilty. Surely somebody right at the very beginning should have said, this can't be so.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you do wonder what information was coming to the board, or the board's reaction to this. But it to me, it was pretty dumb.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
dumb. Those statistics sort of leap out.
And whilst they could claim ignorance in the early years,
Yeah.
surely as time went by, they had to accept the fact that something was drastically wrong, but they wouldn't accept it.
They wouldn't accept it, and by not accepting it, they compounded their crime, if I could, in inverted commas. They really did. I mean, and it may be a crime yet, actually, depending on.
Well, this will be interesting. Perhaps we can come to that, as we get to the end of this section. But what I was going to say was that, to hear these bully boy tactics by the investigators, I was following a bit on the television the other day in the inquiry. What they got up to was absolutely indefensible. And, they were getting the impression that no one else was involved. Each individual postmaster was just the criminal. And the fact that there were others involved just was not recognised.
Yes, I mean, they were very economic with the truth, and secondly, at least the witness, and there have been two witnesses who appeared who were in charge of the action against the person. They didn't come across as very appealing characters.
No.
At all, and I think they did themselves no credit in their behaviour and demeanour, leaving aside the substance of the issue.
And then, of course, it came out that they were getting commission bonuses based on confessions and convictions. Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, that's positively Russian, isn't it? During the days of the Soviet Union, almost.
Exactly. I mean, on that basis, people in the tax office maybe get. I jest.
I know. Let's take a look at the key players in the scandal, because it goes back to Tony Blair being warned in 1998 of problems with the horizon. No action taken.
Yeah.
Are you surprised at that?
I am surprised. Again, how it was brought to him, whether it was part of a number of other issues, and he kind of missed it on the briefing sheet, whatever. You don't know, but you should pay attention to these things in the early days, and if it had been addressed then, that would have been it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we then go on to one of the CEOs involved at the time, and that's Adam Crozier, who was CEO between 2003 and 2010. Now, he's also involved with ITV, isn't he? And conveniently, he wasn't mentioned in the docudrama.
No,
Was that deliberate, do you think?
One can only conjecture, Tony. One can only conjecture.
And then, of course, we get on to Paula Venables, who was CEO from 2011 to 2019. She has now returned her CBE. I have to say that I did sign the petition.
You did
do that. But she seemed to be pretty poor. And what I think is particularly disgusting as far as she's concerned is that she is a minister of the Church of England.
Yep.
And the Archbishop was quite keen on her becoming Bishop of London. I mean,
yes, it really is quite extraordinary. I'd make 2 or 3 observations. Paula Venables is the 3rd high-profile female chief executive to have to fall on their swords.
Yeah.
The lady who ran the John Lewis partnership.
She hasn't quite fallen. I think she's working on it, isn't she?
She's going. She's going.
Yeah.
By mutual consent. The lady who ran NatWest Bank.
Yeah.
And Paul Venables. I mean, you do question whether they were promoted beyond their level of comfort.
Well, I think the problem is that with a lot of companies, they feel that they've got to promote various genders and also various ethnic backgrounds. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best person for the job. But, I mean, obviously my favourite woman, apart from Christine of the 20th century, was Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
And she didn't put up with any bits and pieces.
No.
Would it be unfair to describe the Archbishop as Gary Lineker of the cloth?
Well, basically, he's 68 now. He's got 2 more years to go in post. He rose very quickly, and this is on record. He was turned down from the ministry first time. He was quite a successful executive in the oil industry. He suddenly got the calling, and the Bishop of Kensington rejected him. And then he applied again and rose very quickly. He's a troubled man from a troubled background, but he does have this tendency to speak out on a whole range of issues, whether it's wokery, colonialism, slavery, the abuses of the finance sector. He has a word on everything.
But there hasn't been an archbishop before that has been this controversial.
No. Well, no, there hasn't. If you go back to Thomas Becket, you might.
But you are going back 1,000 plus years.
But you are, you're right, and yet at the same time, as we have, discussed personally, the Church of England is losing worshippers, in huge numbers, and he needs to spend much more time focusing on his flock and how he can maintain his flock, rather than pontificating on issues worldwide. He does himself, his credibility, nor the Church of England much good, in my view, by doing that.
No, I agree. Continuing our list of key players, we then come across Sir Ed Davey. He's the man that drives the removal van, if you recall. And he was in charge between 2010 and 2012. Chose to accept incorrect information about prosecutions, but currently in denial.
Yes, yes. I mean, he's clearly embarrassed about it, and he's also saying, "Well, this is a conservative ploy to discredit the Lib Dems in the run up to the election." He's not on very good grounds, and I think this is going to continue to haunt him politically in the run up to the general election. I don't think he will stand down. I don't think he will be pushed out. But it's a burden that the Lib Dems will have to bear in the run up to the election, Tony.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself what the voters of Kingston and Surbiton are going to think about it.
Well, quite not a lot, I would think, but there we are.
No. Then coming on to the next gentleman on our list, Sir Keir Starmer, 2008 to 2013 Director of the Crown Prosecution Service, should have overseen several post office prosecutions that actually went through the CPS.
Well, exactly. And when you have a number of these prosecutions, he may not give his personal attention and sign off to each. I don't know what
I'm sure he doesn't.
Process is, but if there are a number, you would have thought the statistic would have caused him to perhaps look at the files or get someone to look at the files and evaluate them. But clearly it passed him by.
And cross-reference with the direct prosecutions being made by the post office, because the CPS must have been aware of those, mustn't they?
Exactly. Yes. So yes, he doesn't come out of it shining very well, and again, I think depending on how developments go in this scandal, it may yet tarnish him in the run up to the election. Personally,
in the interest of balance, we must mention that there have been 5 Conservative prime ministers during this time. And once again, they must have been aware of the horizon problems.
Yes. They would have had briefings, how deep the briefings were, or whether they were just a footnote in their boxes. But yes, they certainly all have culpability, and they can apologize as much as they want, but the emotional, personal, reputational damage has been done to a lot of people.
I have to say, I was very impressed by the Fujitsu European director at the inquiry, by basically putting his hands up and saying, we got it wrong and we're prepared to consider a contribution to the compensation.
Yes, I mean, he is, in one sense, slightly fortunate, because I don't think he became CEO. I don't know what his role was before, until 2019. So
that's right.
He is sort of trying to clear up the damage. But he's done the right thing, absolutely. And I think it was extremely important to put that on the record in the inquiry.
I thought he was one of the few people that I've actually seen that came across in a positive and honest way. But there we are. Right. Now, of course, the other thing I saw the other day was the fact that the post office face possible insolvency due to a debt to HM Revenue and Customs.
Yes, that's another sort of curious thing to sort of spin out
shuffling
of this,
the money.
Shuffling the money. Well, if they do, the funds collected from through one department have to be passed over to the other to bail out the post office.
Yeah. And of course, the other interesting thing, Christine brought it up the other day, was the misappropriation of the funds. They all went into a suspense account.
Right.
And she was wondering what actually transferred the money out of that suspense account into the mainstream revenue side, which meant that Paula Venables could get bonuses on it.
Well, I suspect some time ago, since I've been involved in suspense accounts, but suspense accounts may stay unresolved for a few years, and but after so many years, they're probably written into the profits.
And that's what's happened here.
Yeah, and obviously with auditor approval.
And presumably some accountant within the post office has said, we've got X million pounds in the suspense account. Let's transfer it across to the the P&L, and
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, not bother to sort of realise where the source of
No,
funds was or anything like that.
no. He would have. He or she would take the view. Well, there's been no claim on these. It's to our credit.
Yeah.
It's 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years have passed, whatever. Let's transfer it over to the profit for the year.
Given the fact that we've seen, you know, all this heartache as far as the sub postmasters are concerned, several suicides, lots of bankruptcies, how do you actually evaluate an injustice in terms of money when it's on this sort of scale?
Well, you can't value the kind of emotional
Mm,
heartache or the personal distress in that, and any money it it may help provide a better life.
mm,
What period is remaining, but it doesn't emotionally compensate in any way whatsoever for the loss, the distress, and
mm,
suicide and all the other
yeah.
deeply unhappy
Yes.
things that happen as a result of it.
The years of worry, the years of
The
worry.
years of worry, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Concluding the post office, Robert, trial and retribution for post office staff. Do you see anyone actually getting potentially prosecuted?
Um, I, I think that is difficult because you I think it's very difficult to pull people out to make them examples unless they provided the sort of leadership which led to these prosecutions and destruction. I think it's very, very difficult to pick out mid-tier people from this organization to do that, and it may almost backfire. I'm not. I mean, these these people's reputations hopefully will be tarnished for the rest of their
Mm,
lives,
mm,
and it may make social life and other issues difficult for them. But I personally, I think show prosecutions wouldn't be very productive from this, but they are named and shamed, and let's hope that is certainly that will certainly subdue them for the rest of
yeah.
their lives.
I mean, should Paula Venables give her bonus money back?
Um, yes, I suppose morally, yes. Legally, I think you may be able to claw back some of it, but there's
Mm,
limitation periods and so on. So it would be better if she voluntarily returned at least some of her
yeah,
bonus. It would
yeah,
be a
yeah,
grand gesture.
yeah, yeah. And bearing in mind she's a woman of the cloth.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So, yeah, so she's morally bound to, but I think it would be legally difficult to get it all back.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's get on to the general election. When's it going to take
Yes.
place?
Well, as a betting man, to me it would be October, maybe November. And the other thing I think is important is we have the US presidential election. I don't know, we don't want to talk about that in detail here, but
That's for another day.
that's for another day.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, nearer the time. But if it would be nice for the prime minister and actually the leader to know who is going to be in the White House
Mm, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
before the general election, because I think relationships could be difficult. So it'll be October, November. If I were to go for a date, I'd go for something like the third Thursday in November.
Okay. We'll hold you to that possibly.
Please do.
Let's go down the party list now.
Yeah.
Conservatives, Rwanda, a stillborn project. I mean, that's getting into very sticky
Yes,
territory, isn't it?
it's hugely sticky. It also prejudices relationships with other parts of Africa who would like to sign trade agreements with the UK. So nailing their colours to the mast on Rwanda is not it's not good. It's been cumbersome. They've had problems with the judiciary, international law, and so on. There are times when you have to call it a day, and Rwanda is one of them, in my view. Yeah, not very good at all.
And the House of Lords aren't going to do anything to help, so this could go on. It's going to be Brexit revisited.
Exactly, go on and on and on,
Yeah.
and totally counterproductive. And it's definitely the time to drop it. What replaces it, I'm not sure. Someone has again suggested the Channel Islands might be a good place.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. Yeah.
I'm sure I'm joking.
I'm sure there's a facility available on Baru, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
So it looks as if the Labour Party will win.
Yes.
Got any idea? I mean, at the moment they should win substantially, but general elections are funny things, aren't they?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, the polls are volatile, and we would expect the spread in voting intentions to narrow. But it does look as if we're back to a 1997 situation where I think the Conservatives had just under 200 seats, something like that.
Yeah.
And Labour had a whacking majority of 100 and whatever. It looks like that. Obviously, events do boy events, but it doesn't look good. And I think Sunak is really going to have to rely on this upcoming budget in early March, and he gives away enough there to get the Conservatives voters out, because I don't think it is entirely a question of people switching from Conservative to Labour. I think it'll be a fairly low turnout for a general election. So and quote, Conservative supporters will stay at home.
I don't think a lot of people are going to forgive Sunak after what he did to Boris, having played the part of Brutus.
Well, exactly. So it's not the really best the Conservatives can hope for is a hung Parliament, but I don't think it will get that far quickly.
And of course, the other thing that they're up against is the Reform Party, who I think, whilst they might not get seats, might get a lot of votes.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And I mean, interesting enough, and I know the Lib Dems have always been keen on proportional representation. Ironically enough, proportional representation would help the Reform Party to get a number of seats, certainly more than they would under straight past the post. And it's although they haven't come out, at least to my knowledge, in favour of proportional representation yet.
No, this is true. But when the coalition was in its early years, after 2010, they did offer an alternative vote referendum, didn't they? And it got the big raspberry.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. That's right. And we can debate the merits of proportional representation. And I mean, it was interesting when we had the elections for the European Parliament. The UKIP did extremely well. They picked up. They used to come second or third in terms of the number of seats, so it really helped them. But that's a consequence of proportional representation, I suppose.
Now, thinking about our dear friend north of the border, Mr. Alistair McPherson.
Bless him, yes.
Bless him, and all who sail with him. What about the SNP? Is that into a state of terminal decline?
I think it is. We have still have legal processes pending over their how they allocated or did not allocate monies and account for them. I think that is one thing. Secondly,
sorry, Robert, you've frozen. Robert. You've frozen, I'm afraid. I think we've got to the point now where we've run out of time, so we'll have to pick that one up from Robert at some future time. Meantime, can I thank Robert very much for participating, and I hope you will all enjoy this interview. Thank you.